Our scripture passage this morning comes from the book of James, chapter 4, verse 10. Humble thyself in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Now, before we get started, I just want to say it right out. I love being Presbyterian. I love everything about it. I love the polity, I love the theology, I love the history. But have you seen this new pope? Oh my gosh, have you seen the things he says and the things he does and the ways that he treats people? It is unbelievable. If I wasn't wearing my John Calvin boxer shorts right now, I may just have to become a Catholic priest. I'm sorry, Yvette. But our new pope, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, was born in Buenos Aires in 1936, 1 year after the Dalai Lama, if you remember that, to two Italian immigrants in Buenos Aires. He grew up there, went to school, ended up teaching at the local university, literature and psychology. And then in 1998, he went back to seminary a little bit before that, and in 1998, he ended up becoming the Archbishop of Buenos Aires. There's a lot of firsts for this pope. The first pope from South America, in fact, the first pope who wasn't European in over 1,000 years. The first pope who is a Jesuit, the first pope who's ever taken the name Francis on. When asked why he chose Francis, this is what he said. For me, Francis is the man of poverty, the man of peace, the man who loves and protects the creation. One thing that definitely he is like his namesake in is he is the man of humility. When he first became pope, a magazine was interviewing him and asked him, "So who is Jorge Mario, really?" You want to know what he said? "I am a sinner." This is the most accurate definition. It is not a figure of speech or a literary genre. I am a sinner. Talk about humility. Have you seen the Pope Mobile? Have you? Back when John Paul II was shot, they started making these massive Mercedes, super new, shiny Pope Mobiles with the bulletproof glass. Yeah, no, that's not for Francis. He chooses this one instead. I'm telling you the truth. It's a 20-year-old Renault with 190,000 miles on it. This is what he drives himself around in Vatican City and around Rome. It's crazy. His security detail, I think that's them arguing with him right there. They're so mad that he drives around in this car. I don't know if you saw when he came to the United States what he drove in. He drove around in Catherine Levin's car. Do you remember that? The Fiat 500. It's insane. On the day that he was made the Pope, remember when that white smoke came out of the chimney of the Sistine Chapel? And usually they put the Pope in this big caravan and parade back to the Vatican. He refused to go into it. They had to cancel the whole thing. He wanted to go back with the other archbishops in their minibus back to the hotel where they were staying at, where he went and picked up his own bags, wouldn't let anyone touch his bags for him, went down to the hotel front desk, and he himself, with his own credit card, checked out of the hotel. The next morning, he called up his newspaper delivery boy back in Buenos Aires. And personally, from the Vatican, he canceled his subscription to the paper. You probably have heard this before, but he refused to go into the papal residence, this big, basically palace-like residence inside the Vatican. He asked if instead he could stay in one of the two-room guest apartments, which is where he stayed. But what you might not have heard is that he had showers and bathrooms added to the residence, and over the last couple of years, he's had hundreds of homeless people come and stay in the papal residence. It is out of control. When he was in Buenos Aires, one of the things he used to love to do when he was the archbishop is he would go out late at night down into the alleyways where all the homeless people of Buenos Aires would sleep in the alleys. And he would bring sandwiches, and he would sit down on the sidewalk with those who were homeless, and he'd give them a sandwich, and the two of them would eat their sandwiches together and chat away. Well, now that he's the Pope, he obviously can't do that. Wrong! His top officials are furious with him because many nights he disguises himself as an ordinary priest, and he goes out to minister to the homeless on the streets of Rome. Can you even believe it? There are so many firsts for this Pope. Popes never leave the Vatican during Holy Week. It is their tax season. It is craziness. They have so many things going on until Pope Francis. A few years ago, he went out to the local prison in Rome, and he spent his Holy Week washing the feet of the prisoners. And not just washing them, but kissing them. Kissing the feet of men, kissing the feet of women. No pope has ever done that before. And not just Christians' feet. Kissing the feet of Muslims and of atheists, including a Muslim woman prisoner. It's fairly legendary how much he loves people, and particularly children. He was the oldest of 5 siblings and used to take care of his kids, and he's great with children, and he spends lots of time whenever he can being with children. One time when they were holding one of the biggest masses of the year in St. Peter's Square, a little child somehow got past the security and snuck up on the stage with him and ran over to him. When the security came to take the child away, the Pope said no, and he insisted that the child stay with him there at the podium for the entire Mass. He's always, everywhere he goes, he's getting in trouble with the security because he just walks away from the security and goes into the crowds. He takes selfies with people and he embraces people. He'll embrace and kiss anyone. And when I say anyone, I mean anyone. This is Vinicio Ravi. Vinicio Ravi was not used to a whole lot of people embracing him or kissing him. That was until he met Pope Francis. This man is a rock star. No, I mean literally, he is a rock star. The only pope who's ever been on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. The article that they wrote on him was entitled, "The Times They Are A-Changin'." Voted Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 2013. He was a bouncer before he became an archbishop. And he used to like to ride, I didn't say this. So, talk about rock star. A lot of rock stars have played Copacabana Beach. I don't think there's ever been a rock star who's brought 3 million people out onto Copacabana Beach. This is how many people came out for the Pope's Mass when he was there. He was a bouncer. He used to drive a Harley. When he got to the Vatican, they wouldn't allow him to drive his Harley anymore, so you know what he did? He auctioned it off and used the money to build a new soup kitchen in Rome. Can you even believe it? And he's not just humble. He's brave. Unbelievably brave. Here's what it says in Deuteronomy 31. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Then Moses summoned Joshua and said to him in the presence of all of Israel, be strong and courageous, for you must go with this people into the land that the Lord swore to their ancestors to give them. And you must divide it among them as their inheritance. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid and do not be discouraged. In 2 Timothy, it says this, "For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." I don't know if it's a total coincidence, but it seems like this Pope has been reading his Bible. When he got to the Vatican, the first thing he did is he took on the bank scandal that was going on there, just full on. He kicked out the mafia that had been involved with the Vatican, and when it came to the whole sex abuse scandal of the church, he hit it full on, head on, started prosecuting predators and anyone who dared to harbor or protect them. And then he started going out into the slums in Italy where the mafia, the Italian mafia, had its greatest strongholds. He went right into the heart of their turf and started preaching against the mafia. Can you believe it? People were constantly saying, "Francis, you are crazy. You are going to be assassinated." Want to know what he said to that? It's true. Anything could happen. But let's face it, at my age, I don't have much to lose. Can you even believe this guy? It's unbelievable, the things that he's done, the things he's stood up for, the people he's stood up for. When he first came in, he said to all of his staff and those around the world, he said, "This I ask you, be shepherds with the odor of the sheep. Make it real." When one of his archbishops, the Archbishop of Germany, had renovated his residence in the big cathedral complex in Germany, renovated his residence to the tune of $45 million of the church's money, put in a $20,000 bathtub and a $145,000 walk-in closet, Pope Francis suspended him. And he sent him to go live in a monastery. And then he turned the residence in Germany into a homeless shelter. You can't make this stuff up. When he came to the United States to speak to the U.S. Congress, he stood up in front of the Congress, and you may remember that at that point, he was maybe for the first time not a left pope or a right pope or a Republican pope or a Democrat pope. Everybody loved him. Everybody respected him. Everyone on both sides of the aisle were like, who is this guy who is doing the most amazing things? And yet, when he came to speak in front of Congress, they invited him to a really big gala luncheon afterwards with congressmen and senators and all of the highest muckety-mucks in our country. And he respectfully declined and went to eat at a Washington, D.C. soup kitchen instead. It is amazing, the things that this man has been doing. And even his pronouncements have been anything but timid and afraid. A few years ago, when Ramadan ended, he made a pronouncement of respect for the Muslim religion. And he called upon Muslims and Christians to work together to make some of the changes in the world that we all know God would want us to make. He said one time that he thought that when he gets to heaven, he won't be at all surprised if there are atheists up there. And when talking about homosexuality, he said, you know, if someone is gay and they love the Lord and are trying to search after the Lord and they have goodwill in their heart, then who am I to judge? Are you kidding me? Who are you to judge? That's what the Pope does. He judges things. In fact, actually, I think this is a judgment of a very refreshing and surprising and inclusive sort, isn't it? When he also chastised all of his churches, saying, you know, this fascination you all have with divorce and contraception and abortion and homosexuality, it's almost become an obsession for you all. If you want to get obsessed about something, get obsessed about poverty and injustice and oppression. That's the Catholic Pope. Now, last week we were talking about the Dalai Lama and Tutu and about this interesting connection between joy and peacemaking, right? And so while Francis is definitely part of that deep down kind of in your bones joy club. What I want to try to explore a little bit today is this connection between humility and bravery that we see in his life. Because typically we wouldn't put those two words together, would we? I mean, typically when we think of humility, in our culture, we tend to think of humility as a kind of weakness, as being a sort of a doormat so that people can walk on us. But it couldn't be further from the truth. Humility is not thinking less of ourselves. Humility is simply thinking of ourselves less. Do you see the subtle distinction there? Humility is getting our focus, as we were saying last week, off of ourselves and back onto God, where it belongs. Right? Humility isn't tearing ourselves down as much as it's building others up. Understanding ourselves the way that God sees us so that we can understand others the way God sees them. God sees us as beautiful, valuable, worthy, beloved beings, but sees every person around us in the exact same way. Willie Davis. Did you all watch the Super Bowl? Did you guys see Willie waving to us from his home in Playa Vista? This NFL Hall of Famer, 5-time Super Bowl champion, just like that other Tom someone guy. He was on there, and a number of years ago, he spoke at our men's breakfast. And somebody asked him, Willie, for all of your accomplishments, for being such a hero in the NFL, how can you possibly be so humble and so kind? And he said, if that's true at all, it's totally because of my mom. And he said, my mom, when I was growing up, she used to say one thing to me or two things to me over and over, and she never said one without saying the other. She always told me, Willie, you are smart and talented and valuable and beautiful and good-looking, and you are going to be able to do anything in this world that you want. And the other thing she always said at the same time is, and don't you ever think that you're any better than anyone else. They go together, right? I mean, the paradox is that we are keenly, painfully aware of every one of our failures, of our weaknesses, of our shortcomings. We spend our lives trying to make up for those. We're taught from a very early age that the way to get the love and the acceptance and the value that we are craving is to work and to earn it and to compete for it, right? And the truth of the matter is that the more aware we are of our shortcomings, the more we try to either cover them up or compensate them or try to work harder to do more and be more and make more happen and catch up and stay ahead. But the problem with that kind of life is that everything becomes about us. And it is exhausting as we try to prove to other people that they're not what we know we're not what we know ourselves to be, that we are good enough, that we're valuable enough, that we belong, right? If we believe the experts who say that arrogance is usually a shield for a deep down kind of insecurity, and we start to understand that it's when we accept God's love, when we accept Jesus Christ into our lives, when we accept God's love into our lives, when we start to understand that we are beautiful, valuable, preciously created exactly as God wanted us to be individuals, then no longer do we have to try to tear others down or puff ourselves up in order to feel like we belong, because we know that we do. And when we know that down to the tips of our toes, to the core of our being, it changes us. It is a powerful thing that gives us an incredible kind of freedom and an incredible kind of courage and bravery. Isn't it true? A humility that leads to a bravery that leads to both inner peace, outer peace, and world peace. And so the question that I want to leave you with here today, and I want you to go home and think about this week, is where in my life could I be a little more humble and a little more brave? The world is crazy right now, isn't it? Globally, here in our country, in our community, even right here in our church. It's nuts. God needs, the world needs, we all need you to muster your best Pope Francis. We need to be brave. I don't care what side of the aisle you are. What is God calling you to step up for and stand up for and speak out about? For some of you, on one side, it might mean organizing and marching and protesting. For others, it might mean rolling up your sleeves and getting involved and working on something that you really believe in and you think God is calling you to. Where in your life is God wanting you to be a little bit more humble? To humbly admit that maybe we don't have the corner on all the truth. Maybe we don't have the only perspective. Where is God calling you to humbly try to step into the perspective of someone else, whether it's here at this church or in our nation or across this globe? Because what I'm telling you is that if the Catholic Pope, it almost sounds like a joke, if the Catholic Pope could wash and kiss the feet of a female Muslim prisoner, then certainly we could try to step into somebody else's perspective and find common ground with someone that we don't see eye to eye with. Joy, humility, bravery. Smells like a recipe to peacemaking for me. Amen.